is the one who becomes known as what? Doubting Thomas. Thank you, Bernice. Doubting Thomas. After all Thomas has been through in those 2 years of learning, including the recent events of Jesus dying and then being resurrected, Thomas is still doubting. And we point to Thomas and we say, this is the opposite of what it looks like to have faith. The opposite of faith is doubt, right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The opposite of faith is fear. The opposite of faith is fear. I can tell you when I first realized this for myself. I have a very good friend, her name is Emmanuel, whose father was one of those wonderful entrepreneurs. He always had 6 or 7 businesses going at once, kind of on a medium scale. You know, he'd have 4 restaurants and malls, and then he'd have 2 different gift stores, and then he'd have a mechanic shop on top of that, the whole package. He was keeping many balls in the air all the time. This is what he loved to do. He had always hoped that one of his 2 children would follow him into the business, but Emily, my friend, just wanted to stay home with her kids and work part-time in a local law firm. And his son decided that what he really wanted to do was work on airplanes. So neither of them followed their father into the business. So he kept all of these balls in the air until one day he had a stroke. And it was a severe stroke. And it became clear that Emily's father could not look after these businesses. So one by one, Emily and her brother managed to sell off the leases to the businesses to other people. And they sold all of them except for one. They could not sell a china shop lease that was in a mall 2 hours away from where Emily and I lived at the time. So because her father could not run the business, Emily took over the china shop business, and 4 days a week she would drive 2 hours to the china shop, having made arrangements for her children. Every mother in the just pause and think about that, okay? She would work all day at the china shop until about 7 or 8 at night, and she would drive for 2 hours back home. On the other few days a week, somebody else she had hired looked after the china shop. It was killing her. A few times she would ask me to come when she had a big order coming, and she and I would drive the 2 hours there, and Emily would tell me the whole way there how much she hated the china shop, how she couldn't wait to unload the china shop, how the china shop had to go, and the china shop was killing her. Okay? And I agree. I totally agree. But no one would buy the lease on the china shop. So finally, Emily said to me one day, you know what? I'm going to ask for a sign from God that I should just let it go. Yes, I'm going to have to pay a huge penalty if I just break this lease. But I'm going to ask for a sign from God that I should let this go. Because Emily was a person of tremendous faith. So I said, okay, Emily, what's the sign? And she said, the sign is if someone comes and they offer me 2/3 of what the lease is worth, I'll just pay the rest. That's fine. That'll be my sign. That'll be my sign. This is a true story. We walked in that day, and somebody was waiting at the china shop to say, I'd really like to take over this lease, but this is what I can afford, and it was 2/3 of the lease. And Emily looked at this woman, she said, oh no, I'm sorry, I really can't do that. I have to, can't let it go for 2/3. And I stood there. So a few days later, I went with Emily again to help her, and I said, what about the sign? She said, oh no, it wasn't a sign, it wasn't a sign. No, the real sign, this is going to be the real sign, okay? The real sign is going to be if the supplier that I really depend on, because it's my best-selling item, can't deliver anymore, because I heard they might not be able to. That's going to be the sign. You know what's coming, don't you? You know what phone call she got that afternoon, don't you? The supplier said they were no longer going to supply to small stores, only like big stores. I think they're going to Costco. So her main product would no longer be available. That was that afternoon. Guess what she said? Well, we spent the whole ride home with Emily, who was a person of great faith, saying, well, I guess I could get a different supply from this person, that person, that person. I said, Emily, what about the sign? And she said, no, it wasn't a sign, it wasn't a sign. I got one more. A few weeks later, we are driving to the store. I said, Emily, what's the sign going to be? She said, I don't know. The sign's going to be if I just can't continue with the store anymore. I just can't continue. There'll just be some sign. 3 days later, from the apartment above the store, the bathtub overflowed and the entire floor that none of us are going to take over part of his business. And if I let go of the store, I have to admit that my father is not going to be ever well enough to do this kind of work again. And if I let go of the store, I feel like I'm going to lose a piece of who my father has been and who he hasn't been since the stroke. And there I saw no doubt, but there I saw a lot of fear. A lot of fear. The opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is fear. Thomas had traveled with Christ for 2 years. It must have been an extraordinary experience. We read the portions of the Bible now where Christ talks about the living Spirit within us, the power of God that can be accessed through us, that can be brought to the world, the love that we are, the magnificent, magnificent children of God that we are. We read these stories, and we find them so powerful and affirming and inspiring 2,000 years after this happened. Can you imagine what it was like to actually live and breathe in the same place as that great teacher? Can you imagine what it was like to live in whatever catastrophic and astounding spiritual experience that led them to write about that crucifixion story? People have said, do you believe in the literal, crucifixion story? I said, I don't even care. Something of so enormous and huge and astounding experience happened to these people that that's the only way they could describe it. Can you imagine Thomas, who went through that, actually having doubt? I can't. But oh boy, I can imagine him having fear. Because he had spent 2 years being held by that teacher, guided by that person. He had spent 2 years being loved and knowing that he was a magnificent child of God, and now he had to find that for himself. He had to start living what he had been taught. It's a little bit like when we leave university or high school, and we suddenly realize that we're supposed to have acquired all this knowledge and skill, and now we need to get out there and actually do something about it, right? And Thomas was scared. In fact, I would go further. I would say I expect Thomas was terrified, as most of us are. Many of us here collect a lot of spiritual learning. We read books, we come to church, we think about our lives in a very different, I'm going to say more aware life than many people walking on the streets outside. We ask ourselves the big questions about why am I here, what is my mission, how do I be God's love in the world? Those are wonderful questions to ask. And then we get scared. Of course we get scared. When we meet a situation where we think, I'm not enough here, I can't be God here, we get scared. And then we accuse ourselves of having doubt. But we don't have doubt. We're just frightened. Fear is the crux of everything that causes us pain in the world. Everything. It was at the root of my friend Emily's refusal, denial, reluctance to get rid of that store, even though her God was saying, Emily, let it go. Fear was holding her trapped. Fear is at the root of every violent act in this world. Every violent act comes from, I have to hurt you or I will not feel powerful. I have to hurt you or I might not have enough. I have to hurt you or you might hurt me. Fear is at the base bottom of every act of violence in this world. Fear is at the bottom of every act of betrayal, every anger, every bitterness, every resentment. Fear is the root of all of that. Doubt is not the opposite of faith in God. Fear absolutely is. It's a big thing God wants us to do, to go out and be love in the world. It's a scary thing. We don't know what it would look like. We don't know who we might be if we actually were these incredible, magnificent children of God, if we actually did listen to that inner and higher voice, if we actually did try to bring love to every situation, understanding to every person, compassion to every truth of the matter is, at heart, we are exactly what Marianne Williamson beautifully described, so beautifully, in fact, that Nelson Mandela quoted Marianne Williamson. At heart, it isn't that we're not good enough that scares us. At heart, it's not that we're weak or helpless that scares us. At heart, what scares us is that absolute magnificence that we know that is there. At heart, what scares us is the freedom that is being offered to us. At heart, what scares us is that extraordinary power of God that wants to work through our lives and make us love in this world. That's what scares us. Because we'll be changed. And that's a scary thing. But as I said on Easter Sunday, changing into freedom is the basis of Christian faith. It's why we're here. Somebody did come to see me about a week ago and she said, I've been praying to God to quit smoking. I've been praying to God to quit smoking. It's not working. Why is it working? My prayers are not being answered. And I said, okay, well, if you quit smoking, what do you think that would look like? And she said, oh, I'm so scared I gain weight. Oh, I'm so worried because I think my friends who I hang out with, we all smoke and we go to bars and we smoke. Well, they'll just feel like I'm not with them anymore. Oh, I'm so scared because if I quit and then I go back to it, I think I'm really hard on myself. And I said, so the problem here is not that you can't quit smoking. The problem is that you're scared to quit smoking. You're scared of losing your friends, of gaining weight. It wasn't doubt about whether or not this was good or she could do it that was holding her back. It was for fear. It was fear. Whatever you are finding in your life is a place of doubt for you. Whatever you haven't given over to God yet. Whatever you haven't, as we said Monday night, put on the table for God to go of yet. Whatever that is, I'll tell you right now, it's got nothing to do with your lack of faith. You're scared. And that's okay. Because what we heard today was that when Thomas was scared, Jesus didn't say, Thomas, get over it. Forget it, Thomas, I've had it with you. Out of here, Thomas. What does it take, Thomas? No faith, go away, Thomas. Jesus says, it's okay. Come to me. I'm going to show you that I'm still here for you. In this week ahead, in the world and in our world, there are going to be times when we are going to feel like we don't have enough faith. And in those moments, you stop and you say to yourself, I have enough faith. What I need is for God to give me courage, to remove my fear. Just let me know that I am that magnificent creature, and I tell you, it will happen for you. It will happen for you. So when we come to the story of Thomas again, I look at that title in every Bible and I say, Doubting Thomas? I don't think Thomas had any doubt at all. I think Thomas was frightened, as we all are, of the magnificence that he was being expected to be, knew he could be, had been shown he could be. And that in that moment of being scared, Christ came to him and said, it's okay, Thomas, I'm here. And Thomas found, we know, the strength and the courage to go out and be magnificent and tell other people they were too. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? All we have to do is give God our fear and go out into the world and be magnificent children of